Welcome back, everybody. Loved all the engagement in the last panel. So let's keep it up, folks. And let me invite everybody to introduce yourselves in the chat. Go to the chat and select everyone from the drop down. Welcome to drop in a little bit about yourself, a place to connect, whether it's LinkedIn or what have you. And please share your comments with us throughout the show. If you have questions for the panel during the show today, please put them in the Q&A area, which is just to the left of the chat, so it's easy for everybody to get them. Yeah, Jim, as Jim just pointed out, our moderator, feel free to ask questions throughout the show. We want to keep it as engaged as possible. This panel is going to talk about something that's been touched on each of the sessions today, and that is working with creators on influencer marketing campaigns and all the different platforms and considerations around that. And we have just a stellar group of panelists. So without further ado, please welcome Ricky Ray Butler, CEO of Ben Group. Ricky, great to have you here. Please welcome Jamie Gutfreund, Global Chief Marketing Officer, Whalar. Jamie, great to have you. Please welcome Paco Suro, GM Global Partner Payments, Tipalti. Paco, great to have you here. And our moderator today is none other than Jim Louderback. Jim is GM and SVP of VidCon, the place for all things creator economy. So welcome, Jim. Great to have you moderating today.
Great to be here too. Thank you, Ned. And thank you for having us here at Digital Entertainment World. It's so psyched to be back here, even if it's just on Zoom today, virtually. We will all be back in person very soon. I can't wait for that to happen. So till we get there, this is going to be an amazing session talking a little bit about influencer marketing, the creator economy, what's next. Amazing that people think the influencer market is going to grow to $28 billion by 2026. A lot of the growth happening in our normal platforms, you can imagine, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitch. Great group here. We're going to jump right into it and talk a little bit about the content, the strategies, how people are getting around and thinking about the creator economy, the attention economy, the passion economy, whatever you want to talk about it. We had an introduction to each of the panelists, so I'm not going to go into any detail on their background. You can look them up online pretty easily. I want to jump right into it. And let's talk a little bit about how kind of the relationship between agencies, between brands, and between creators has changed over the last few years. And Jamie, I want to kick it over to you to kick this off, as you are now CMO for one of the biggest influencer marketing agencies in the world, Whalar. So tell us how that relationship has changed from your point of view.
Thanks, Jim. Well, I think we actually call ourselves a creator commerce company for that exact reason, because there is and we'll get into this, I know, about influencers versus creators, but the way we look at it is that we look at the talent, the creators, the platforms, at the brands and the agencies. And it's an ecosystem, it's a marketplace. And we work with all of them in individual ways and the combination. And I think that the idea that we're building a scalable solution is what's appealing to marketers these days, as opposed to one-off little transactional opportunities. The whole thing has grown, and you really have to be able to deal with procurement. You have to deal with all of the traditional agency style models to help enable the brands to jump into this in a big way.
Ricky, you also run a big agency doing lots of different things in the creator economy, in the branded economy, influencer, whatever. We'll get into that. But tell me, from your perspective over the last couple of years, how has this dynamic changed and how is it changing?
There are so many limitations with agencies. It's good to have white glove service for brands, as well as technology, data-driven systems and processes. And what we've learned is that you need to bring a lot more value to the table, specifically to creators than just brand deals. And so we've acquired TubeBuddy, where we help over 9 million creators be data-driven and growing their audiences, as well as their revenues, and then also making it an easier experience to work with brands at scale and vice versa. And so there has to be more of a hybrid model, because we're no longer in the centralized world of media. It's extremely decentralized. There's over 50 million different creators out there. And to be able to monitor, prioritize, and organize all this content is impossible for the human mind. And so we see ourselves as a hybrid, being an AI business that helps empower brands and creators to work with each other.
So for you guys, it sounds like AI being the connective tissue between those three. Paco, I want to turn it over to you. You have a great perspective on the creator economy. You see a lot of the flows of cash and other financial instruments that happen between all the different parties And I know you're a great observer of the space as well. From your perspective, how has that dynamic changed over the past few years?
Yeah, I would echo both Jamie and Ricky. Like the reality for us is, yeah, we're based sort of at the end of the spectrum, right? The end of the journey. Very relevant point, but the digital platform sort of growth in the space that we've seen has been, exponential, to say the least, over the last few years, and it will continue to be, right, as creatives find new channels and new opportunities.
Yeah, it seems that creators more and more want to become direct-to-consumer brands. They want to build their own brands rather than engaging with brands. Ricky, you see this play out. Is that changing the dynamic between brands and creators?
Yeah, it's going to force brands to be much more data-driven and make sure that they work with creators more at scale, and to make it as simple as possible for both sides. Because creators, they're great when it comes to making content. They're very creative, but they're not celebrities. These are the future studios and TV networks. Some of them are getting more viewership than most of the cable networks out there today, like people like Jimmy, Mr. Beast. And so, there has been a shift. And I would say, unfortunately, there's been a lack of being very data-driven and understanding how big this really is. So you have Netflix, which is bigger than the 5 top cable networks combined, no ad support. No, I mean, it's not an ad-supported platform. But if you look at YouTube or Instagram, where Instagram has 85% of its viewership coming from creators, that's way bigger than Netflix. That's way bigger than Netflix. All the SVOD platforms and all of TV combined is just a fraction of what Instagram or YouTube bring to the table when it comes to eyeballs and viewership. And so it's really big. People need to evolve and realize how big it is, figure out how to look at all the data, both the structured and unstructured, to understand how to turn this powerful ecosystem into a sales channel, not just a way to work with a handful of creators and do something creative.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Paco, you have a lot more customers now as potentially creators are going direct. How do you see that playing out? And how does the data that you see show how creators are going direct and really building their own businesses?
Yeah, I mean, like the platforms themselves, they create the audience, right? To some extent, the creators are drawn to platforms, and it's an ecosystem that works very well amongst itself. We've seen, in terms of what we would consider the partners of the platforms, right? These creators, 7-8 figures of number of creators that we're effectively in process of transacting with, right? That come from these platforms. So the growth continues. It's sort of an interesting question too around them building their own brands. There's a brand within the platform, and then there's using, commerce websites to sell the swag, right? And so it's really interesting to see some of this sort of manifest itself in different ways. So the monetization channels are different, right? They're not just Mr. Beast on YouTube, walking through my Minecraft journey. It is, I can go get a hamburger, or I can go buy a t-shirt, and that becomes a different experience. So it's super interesting.
Yeah, one of the areas I think that's really interesting is in the toy space. And Jamie, you were at a couple of toy companies, Hasbro, MGA, before going over to Whalar. And, there have been big brands there, right? We saw Ryan come up with Ryan's toy line, and I think it's all over the place now, and a bunch of others. How has, particularly in the child and the toy space, how has the fact that creators are ascendant changed that world?
I think, the toy business is in an interesting space because of all the e-commerce and less opportunities for them to be discovered in the old school way, where we used to take kids and walk down the aisles of Toys R Us. But also the traditional media channels are getting more expensive, and kids aren't spending time there. So to echo on what Ricky was saying before, the eyeballs are moving, whether it's kids, families, older people, everybody's eyeballs are moving to places where it's harder and harder to reach them. These niche audiences are atomized over so many different channels. And so I think what the creator economy has enabled, and really forcing people to understand, is that they are the gathering points. The creators are the new publishers. They are the ones gathering the audiences, and they are like when cable first came out and we had hundreds of channels. That's what creators are. And in fact, what's really interesting, YouGov just came out with a study that 39% of weekly viewing for people ages 13 to 50 is called non-professional content, which is creator content. So 39% of your audience, whether you're a kid or an adult, is now off the traditional paid media channels. How the hell are you going to manage that as a brand if you don't pivot? Because that's where the bodies are. So, that's the biggest shift that we're seeing across all industries.
Okay, I just want to take a little bit of umbrage with that term, professional content versus not. I know it's not yours, Jamie,
That's
but
not mine. I agree.
Yeah, the fact is, let's face it, if you're a creator and you're pulling down $10, $20, $30,000 a month with brand deals, with merch, with things that you're doing, with other stuff, with subscriptions, all the aspects of the creator economy, you are a professional.
Yeah.
Am I right, anybody? Everybody's going like this. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think the whole point is that's how they classified it. And we had the same conversations. So what is professional? And that's the evolution. And in fact, one of the biggest things that, and I don't know if these guys are seeing this too, a bigger growing part of our business is the fact that the creators are creating content that doesn't even appear on their channels, that the brands are using it as their creative production strategy. Especially during the pandemic, people got hip to that. So instead of hiring an agency, they're hiring creators who then make incredible content. We just shot a commercial, I use that air quotes, for Porsche. And it was done in 10 days. It was remarkable. It's not going to appear on a social channel. It'll be used for their advertising content.
Yeah, Ricky, riff on that a minute. I know you've seen some of this happen too.
Yeah, I mean, back to what you said about, professional content. I remember the early days, well over a decade ago, where I'd get laughed out of rooms in agencies and brands because they said the content's way too organic and raw. It's not going to fly with us. And the truth is the eyeballs were already going in that direction, and now it's massive. So there's a lot of things happening today, and I get really excited when I hear about what's happening in China, because live streaming is really strong in a couple of different verticals in the States and in the West right now. And it's becoming more and more mainstream. But, we're seeing creators generating, maybe 8 figures in revenue in 24 hours doing a live stream. In China, you have Via, and you have Via and a couple other creators that are seeing hundreds of millions. Via specifically and Lipstick Brother both saw over $1 billion in revenue in 15 hours of live streaming. That's American dollars. And so it's exploding. And there's 2 issues. One, how are you going to navigate the world of ad exhaustion where 90% of the globe are skipping ads? You have 50% of the globe, 47% that have an ad blocking technology. But then what's even more difficult is you have so many different options. As a human, it's impossible to compute in your brain of how to navigate all this content. And so, one thing that we've been investing, tens of millions of dollars in is creating, and architecting the destination of the creator economy, to truly make it so these entrepreneurs, these media moguls, these artists in the era of the artists, where more artists are making money now than ever before, can be data-driven, take out the guesswork, save time, and truly, fulfill their dreams of self-expression with art.
Yeah, $500 million in 15 hours. Paco, what are you seeing on the? We should talk live streaming for it. What are you seeing? Billions.
Lipstick Brother did $1.2 billion in 15 hours.
$1.2 billion in 15 hours. Paco, what are you seeing on the live streaming of commerce that's creator driven? And talk a little bit about it from your perspective.
Look, I think a couple of things. Just want to go back to, they're all professionals. We're all professionals, right? There's a tax event that happens when you get paid. So as far as I'm concerned, you are a professional.
Yeah, right.
And so you either 1099 or W-2 or however you push it through. So that's number one. I had the distinct opportunity of spending a couple of years of my career at Shopify, and a really interesting time for them. And I learned a lot, certainly learned a lot about the entrepreneur, but it's the concept of the side hustle. It's another job. It's your passion that you're bringing forward, and that can turn into a great, tremendous monetization opportunity. So I think that's the first thing that I'd focus on, is that they're all professionals, and that ecosystem is continuing to grow as more and more channels or avenues are available for creators to actually sort of present themselves to an audience. So that's it. So, and apologies, Jim, I may have danced around your initial question. I don't know if I quite answered it.
No, it's all right. Ricky just dove into live streaming a little bit, which I think is fascinating. Jamie, anything you want to add on live streaming before I actually have a question that I want to dive into with you and then bring out to the group, Jamie, but anything you want to add on live streaming?
I cannot compete with Ricky's and his billions, so I'll just skip. Let's just leave it at that.
Ricky Ray, billions
Nailed
and
it.
billions
Billions.
of dollars.
Well, yeah, the record before that was a year ago. Someone that's nicknamed the king of live streaming, and he did 300 million in a day, 305 million a day. And so it's really exciting because, you know, in initiatives I've invested in and creators that I know personally, you know, if they need to make money, they can make a couple million in a couple of hours. But we're not seeing that scale in the West, and it's obvious now that Walmart and of course all the, you know, social media platforms, they're investing heavily in this area because they all know what's happening in China.
Right.
Alibaba in the past has spent more than $1 billion on creators in 1 year. In the West, we got to stop getting emotionally too creative in our own heads and follow the data and figure out how do we scale this, because there's so much opportunity here because only 1% of creators out there are above the poverty line. And so there's this blue ocean. We're the biggest company in the world that's doing this, and we're barely penetrating. And
Well,
so
TikTok is going to go to be a streaming platform. I mean, that's the next wave. It's going to be on everyone's. I mean, it won't be on your phone. It'll be everywhere. It's so we're moving. And the thing I think to remember about TikTok, which I know everybody talks about all the time now, is that you don't check TikTok. You watch TikTok, which just the semantics of it all tell you what's going on. And so as they are, you know, they're on Fire TV and they're increasing their distribution. It's not what you think it is. It's far beyond that.
Yeah, TikTok is coming soon to a bar, pub, and probably even the top of a gas station near you at a gas pump,
Exactly.
which is great. And I think it'll be interesting to watch as they go from, you know, 60 seconds to a minute to more and more and longer engagement. And shopping, Ricky, to your point,
Oh my
is
God.
going to be really big there. Anyway, let's dive in a little bit on influencer and creator and those terms. And Jamie, I really want to go to you first because you already slapped me down for calling you an influencer marketing agency, which I apologize for.
Okay.
Talk about influencer versus creator and talk about what that means for you and why maybe influencer is a bad word.
It has become a bad word because of just the attachment to it and where the industry started. I kind of, you know, if you look at it back in the day when you started VidCon, you know, YouTube star, that had a very small sort of niche approach, right? So I think influencer got tagged with girls in bikinis, you know, holding up a bottle of beer saying, "I like this beer." And they were more endorsement oriented. And to Ricky's point, they're artists. Creators are more storytellers and artists. And I think the benefit or the attractiveness about working with a creator is that they can create content that you can also use as part of your mainstream marketing. That's a bit of a difference. And I think the creator economy speaks to so much more than just putting something on TikTok. It is building a brand. It is capturing a community. And I think creators build communities and they are the new publishers. So if you're trying to reach a broad range of consumers or audiences, you kind of have to go through a creator to get to the people that you want to engage with. And what I'm most optimistic about in the world of creator marketing is that for brands who are trying, and some are doing it better than others, to figure out how to diversify the voices that they're working with and diversify the stories that they're telling. When you work with a creator, you actually source the content and the ideas from the exact communities that you want to engage with. And that is the difference. And I think that's the most optimistic thing that we're seeing in the marketplace right now.
Yeah. And, you know, I have to lean into the whole creator aspect of it because I could not agree with you more. And you think about creators are artists first. They exist to create, whereas an influencer, and Kim Kardashian is the lazy version to point to, just wants to be rich. And I was reading a wonderful piece from novelist Elle Griffin, her latest newsletter, where she's talking with artist and writer Nishant Jain, pronouncing his name completely wrong. So sorry. Two quotes that they had that I love about that sort of a creator creating and then the desire to, you know, I got to make money so I can keep creating. And Elle said, quote, to make it in this world, you have to be both the creator and the entrepreneur. And this creates a tension between making art and making a living as an artist. And Nishant responded, yeah, my primary job is to create an environment in which the creator can thrive. I think those are both really interesting things. Let's talk a little bit about that art versus economy aspect of it. And Ricky, I'm going to throw to you to respond to that, but let me know what your thoughts are.
So this is one of those things where I get really passionate, and Jim, we've known each other for a long time, and yeah, so thanks for asking this question. Art is so important for humanity. Art preserves history. It preserves culture. It's data. It's unstructured data, and it's the data that has the most influence. And so, I don't think there's anything better for the future than having more diverse thinking and diverse expression out there to help educate people that they can be individual, that they can be empowered, and they can do things in a different way. And I think it's going to level up we are as a people. I think it's going to level up the planet. And so, these are artists, and it's a trade that's been abused and marginalized for centuries and centuries. And finally, these artists, which I'm a self-proclaimed one that kind of sucks at making art. I like to empower artists, but these artists are now in power. They're not taking it back. They never had it, but now they can sustain a business. And I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. This is going to get much more decentralized. We're not just going to see these artists, being able to work across a variety of different platforms and become more data-driven, but they're going to own one day their own IP and their own platforms and their own data. And that's when it's going to get really interesting. And this is where we all have to evolve as brands, as marketers, as well as creators of, understanding what's about to happen and making sure that we're all ahead of it and that we build the infrastructure so it can succeed.
Paco, how do you see this art versus creator versus influencer world playing out? And, with your background at Shopify, I'm sure you saw a lot of things that were enabling artists and creators to actually make money so they can continue to make and produce.
Yeah, I mean, I think the commerce platform, that operating system is pretty critical to sort of that success, right? It's part of your online brand. The digital platforms then that help you, let's say, stream or whatnot or play, are the aspect that really builds the recognition of who you are. Sort of when both Jamie and Ricky were speaking to this sort of notion of creator versus influencer, and I kind of think about like painters, like a Monet, a Manet, they didn't make any money back then. They tried to sell those things. They didn't have an audience, and now, a couple hundred years later, they're millions and tens of millions of dollars for their artwork, right? So I think that in today's world, these creators, these artists, in a lot of different fashions, whether it's gaming, whether it's journalism, whether it's music and so forth, they now have platforms where they can monetize today, and I think that is pretty powerful. The intersect, from my perspective, is one that I see more at the making sure they get paid on time and all that good stuff, which, frankly, is pretty relevant.
Yeah.
That being said, it is really interesting, and a creative to me is an artistic individual, and I think that is pretty powerful. The influencers, you touched on it. I think I had in my working notes, Kim Kardashian is a great example, right? But there are many. What I guess I would ask both Ricky and Jamie, just out of curiosity, and this is more their side of the house, obviously. Where do professional athletes sit in this mix, right? Are they a pure influencer, or are they now creating because they have their own branded apparel and things like that? So it's super interesting.
I think they are in the creator category as well. But if I can, before I wasn't talking about the different labels, it's also about knowing your audience. So creators like to consider themselves as creators or YouTubers or, gurus on TikTok, or, a lot of people call themselves different things. I think influencers are still being used because there's a lot of companies that don't know the word, creator, or are not very familiar with it. And then you also have to look at the East, or specifically China, where people call creators KOLs, or key opinion leaders. And so we're in the wild, wild west. There's going to be a lot of different nuances based on where you are and based on who you talk to. But when it comes to the athletes, or when it comes to like the musicians, I definitely put them in the creator category, and they're all waking up as well that, wow, they can probably get paid more now that they're growing an audience and that they're communicating with content to their audience. And I personally believe this is something that's shaking a lot of the studios and a lot of Hollywood in their boots. I said that kind of funny. They're shaking in their boots because a lot of these, musicians that have always relied so much on labels or relied so much on centralized media companies now have 200 million followers. And as they become a lot more sophisticated, and some of the athletes as well, as they become more sophisticated and say they don't need to, and realize that they don't need to rely on a production company or on a studio, but they need to invest in their own and better optimize their content and better engage with their audience, they're going to realize that they're going to be able to, truly be empowered and level up how much they take in when it comes to revenue, but also, be able to be their own boss and not ever have to retire if they don't want to.
Can I jump in?
Jamie, yeah, jump in.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting. We're talking about this shift in ownership and the ability to support yourself. And the next wave of where this is going is for creators to be able to make money while they sleep, because that's actually how you build wealth. Not an hourly rate, not being able, not being limited by the ability to just create. And that comes from building their community. And I know we're supposed to talk about this later, but I'm a little.
We can talk about it now. It's fine.
We can talk about it. But I'm a little obsessed with companies like Mighty Networks, and that Gina Bianchini, is that how you say her last name?
Yep,
Who I'm a huge fan of. Their whole premise is that through Mighty Networks, you can own, not rent your community, because for creators being captive to algorithms, they're starting to get very sophisticated. And we see this because part of our business is actually managing talent as well as the brand deal side. And so they're moving over so that they can build a community they own. They can take the community wherever they want, and they can monetize the community connecting among themselves. That is a true ability for a creator that is just starting to happen. And it is a trusted community that's going to enable creators to do that. And I think what's interesting and important to point out to the audience, creators, as Ricky said, some of them are on YouTube, some of them are on TikTok, but a lot of them are diversifying, or they're trying to diversify. And what makes that challenging for a brand and a creator is when those media results, those media packs, they don't talk to each other. So if you've created content for a campaign, right, for a makeup company, and you're posting content on TikTok, Reels, and YouTube, none of those companies talk to one another. So the creator has to spend an enormous amount of time gathering that information. And if they're managed, the managers trying to figure that out. So those are some of the things structurally and in the infrastructure that are starting to be addressed that will enable creators to really create at scale.
Yeah, and let's lean into that a little bit. And I'm going to refer to a question in our Q&A. And by the way, please ask questions because we will get to answering some of them. But Jared Denson says, how do you advise creators to create their own platform, to do what you said here, not just rely on the established ones, because YouTube can take a creator down, TikTok, and that you don't own yourself, your audience, and what you do on these platforms. How do you create your own platform and do that? And Mighty Networks is a great example. Ricky, I'm going to turn it over to you to see if you have another example or two you can share.
Yeah, I have two other examples. I have a variety of examples, but this is starting to happen a lot more where creators are going to be able to own their own IP and as well as their own platform. One example is Corridor Digital. Corridor Digital is one of the pioneer creators that did a lot of live action content around gaming themes and comic book themes. And then, they've also, kind of created their own version of movie magic on like, how does, post editing, make a difference with film, et cetera. And they've become strong thought leaders where people like Seth Rogen and other celebrities are all flocking to try to be in their content. Well, they own corridordigital.com. And I think around like 1% of their followers subscribe for around $4 to $5 a month. And that matches the amount of money that they're making on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And so that says a lot of what can happen there. I have ownership, and I'm an executive producer and a co-founder of a company, called The Chosen, which is a faith-based series. It's got hundreds of millions of views in the last year. It has monetized extremely well. And what's great about that with tech and distribution partner, Angel, is that we've been able to, own our data, and we've been able to connect with our community that we've built up to millions and millions of people without any risks, as well as being able to do that and grow our presence on YouTube and Facebook and other places. And so this is starting to happen a lot more often. So I think there's going to be a lot of companies like the Mighty Networks that are going to empower creators. But what it comes down to is just being very data driven, being platform agnostic, figure out which platforms are going to help you grow your community the best way possible, but also start planning, whether it's hiring your own data science and dev teams, or finding different offerings out there like Vimeo, which is trying to help creators have their own SVODs. There's a lot of options out there where creators can truly figure out and take into their own hands to own their own data, which in return will make it so they can, better understand all the things that they should do to be successful.
Yeah, we'll see about some of the pricing on some of the people you mentioned. But Paco, what do you think about about owning your community versus sort of leasing it, renting it, or borrowing it on the platforms?
Well, I think of the cost of owning, right? And so that's building, maintaining. I think it'd be great if you could have an army of data scientists to help you figure it out. Absolutely. That all comes with a trade-off, right? And so there are platforms, the platforms are built to some extent to abstract all of that. So then you can focus on your creative, right? On your brand. So we go back to that commerce platform, they are there as an operating system to build your online store so that you don't have to worry about how to code pages in Python, right? You can just move into, I'm going to sell sweaters, or I'm going to sell my mugs, and then I'm going to refer to my YouTube channel to come watch me, right? So that's a way that I sort of think about it, is the trade-off. And we're talking about massively successful, examples most likely that are able and have the capabilities, the capacity to build something of that scale, which probably makes sense. But
I think tech's going to go in that direction. I think tech is going to become a lot more automated and a lot more, easy to navigate and to leverage. And like mentioning Corridor Digital, that 1%, one person that pays like $4 a month for them to get that equivalent from another person, like watching their YouTube videos, they need to watch 5,000 YouTube videos. And so as these creators build their own universe of businesses, they're going to figure out how to do this. And there are a good handful of creators like hiring the right people and the right business partners to make sure that they can grow those platforms. But you're right, it's still the very beginning, and we're going to see a huge wave of it, I believe, in the next 5 to 10 years.
Paco, I'm going to let you finish your thought, and then Jamie, I'm going to let you jump in.
Yeah, I think it's all very fluid, and I like the point Ricky's making. I think that to me, it's like these platforms, when we reference a YouTube or a TikTok, that's a huge audience, right? And so that's still valuable. So even if and when you create your own dedicated channel, you've drawn an audience from somewhere else, and now you've got to figure out how to keep them on your channel too, right? And so it is interesting, and probably a little bit above my punching weight and expertise, but it's super interesting.
Leverage and monetize. Jamie, what do you think?
I like to go back to put things in a little bit of context, and some of us were around in the early 90s when the internet happened, and there were a lot of companies that before the browsers, I own it. I worked at Prodigy, if anybody's old enough to remember that.
I saw that. I was going to talk to you about CompuServe, but I figured we'd date ourselves.
Old. I'm totally dating myself. I was a child. But I think, it's important to remember those networks were proprietary. They were not on the internet. There were no browsers. And you had Excite Network. You had all of these new ways to monetize, and Microsoft had shows, and everyone was figuring out, we're kind of in the same space right now. However, the technology is better, the buy-in is better, and you're not dealing with a 14.4 dial-up. Where I think we're also going to start to see some really big leaps is with all the democratization of design capabilities. Mm-hmm. Look, every kid has a phone, so we all know that they all know how to film and make content, but you've got companies like Figma, right, or Canva. They're making it so you don't have to spend a fortune, to your point. You don't have to have tech enabled. I mean, you could have it enabled. You don't have to have it on the payroll to be able to express yourself at scale. And I think, again, I keep going back to scale. And that's where I get very excited, because anybody can create something amazing and you don't need high-end production capabilities.
Yeah, let me shift gears just a little bit. We've got about 10 minutes left here. And I want to talk about brands, because this was supposed to be a discussion about brands. And we talked a little bit about brands. But Jamie, I'm going to turn to you again here. Let's say creators all end up with their own communities on Mighty Networks or, Discord or Patreon or wherever, whatever, tokenized with Roll and Rally. And they're making money from their audience, and it's rolling in, and they're making their own brands, and they're making their own DTC stuff. Where do brands fit into this equation?
Yeah, good question. Well, they're amassing the audiences, first of all. I think the big shift will be measurement. Measurement has to get much more sophisticated. Again, measurement in the traditional media world, look at Nielsen, and I'm sorry if anybody here works at Nielsen, but they've had some challenges. So measurement has to up level so that it can be a line item on a budget that's at scale for a Procter & Gamble or a Unilever, and be able to be bought at that kind of a scale. But brands are figuring out, we're seeing we work with everybody from Google to Amazon to MAC Cosmetics. We just did a big campaign with Martha Stewart on TikTok for a makeup brand called Clé de Peau. Shameless plug, but it was really good. And but the brands are getting more sophisticated. The people that are handling creator marketing are not just in the PR department, and they're not the 25-year-old just graduated college because you understand this creator stuff. It's becoming more rigorous, more robust, with measurement and with the ability to wash, rinse, repeat, and know that if you did something one way, you can take those learnings, apply them, and keep scaling this whole economy.
Yeah, Ricky, what do you think? How do brands fit into these tokenized owned community spaces, and are they even going to be relevant in the future that you guys are laying out?
I believe so, and I believe it's blockchain technology is going to be game changing. It already is. I think the NFTs are just showing just a little bit of like what's going to happen when the SEC ends up approving, et cetera, or, gets a little more innovative where we can start fractioning tokens or fractioning NFTs, where 100,000 or 1 million different people could all invest into the same piece of art or film or TV series or channel. That's when things get really interesting. And that's where, another level of empowerment for artists and creators and influencers is going to be there. But first and foremost, brands need to focus right now on attribution. If you're not going into this space, figuring out how and how much impact you're going to be creating, working with creators and having a feedback to make sure you can optimize that, you should stop, don't spend any money, invest internally on attribution and get a partner that can help you optimize and scale that. We've invested tens of millions of dollars in just our AI technology alone to be able to create predictive algorithms to help predict views, to predict clicks, as well as sales. And, as you are able to level up the technology that you're working with, to not just look at the metadata, that you can fit in a spreadsheet, but to actually have computer vision or NLP to be able to see the actual content and learn from it and get context from it. We've learned when predicting sales, it's a game changer. And it's the unstructured data that's needed for that. But you can't do that unless you can first track attribution. And so if you're not attributing sales or transactions, and you're just working with creators that have a check off the list to say that you did it to your boss, you're going to fail.
By the way, everybody out there thinks that we're being sponsored by North Face. We aren't. It's just cold. Like I've got North Face. You've got Paco. Did you have North Face on over there?
No, I put out Patagonia. I had a,
okay, so I'm usually a Patagonia guy here, but brands work with us, and we're creators of some sort. Paco, why don't you riff a little bit on what Ricky was talking about and say where you think brands live? Sorry, that North Face thing was hilarious.
I'm going to have some fun. I think they live in the metaverse, and I think that's what we should be talking about. It's super interesting what's happening in that space, and it ties into decentralized finance and blockchain and various types of cryptocurrencies, whether it's NFT, whether it's a stable coin, whether it's more traditional coins that we trade in today. Super, super interesting. I think NFT, Ricky's been touching on that a bit. That to me is perfect for arts collectibles, makes sense. I think the next bastion that is getting a lot of, it has some current headwinds is around the gaming space and how to really use those, but you're going to see that become more prevalent. And how it all intersects on the metaverse. I mean, people are buying real estate on the metaverse now. I mean, it's crazy. You're buying blocks on the metaverse. Those are storefronts, and those are where brands are going to have their shingles. And then from there, you're going to click and you're going to buy. And so it's going to be super, super interesting going forward around the space.
And that is an amazing promo for the next session that we're doing here at 1 o'clock. The power of the metaverse, how brands are embracing marketing's new frontier. That is coming up in the now 4 minutes that we have left. I have a question for each of you, getting back more towards brands, creators, the influence of economy, the creator economy, the passion economy, whatever economy you want to call it. I really want to know, what is a best practice, best way to work with creators today? I want everybody at this session to walk away with 3 amazingly cool tips, secrets, thoughts. I don't know. We'll start with that. Jamie, I want to turn over to you. Like, what's a best practice right now to work with creators to really help your brand?
Well, there's 2. One, you got to let them advise you on what they think is the right way to talk to their audience. Don't go for the old school control, polished look. They know their audience, so listen to them. The other thing that is increasingly becoming capable is know who their audience is. And you can do lookalike modeling from their audience, really understand their audience and index against what they're buying. There are companies now that are able to give that, like Tubular Labs can give you an Amazon shopping index on what people's audiences actually buy.
Cool. Ricky?
Yeah, be data-driven. Be data-driven on who has the best affinity with your brand, who has the audience overlap with your brand, who's going to most likely drive the most impact when collaborating with them. And so being data-driven, I mean, it does not take away from creativity, it empowers creativity. But in addition to that, always lead with consensus and empowerment. You will not scale a creator campaign unless you change your ways of how you work with creative. And you understand that this individual knows how to communicate with their audience better than anyone else that exists. And that's why they have an audience. And to be self-aware of what your expertise is when it comes to vision and what you want to accomplish. When it comes to creative, don't have your creative agency on a call telling the creator what to do.
Yeah, totally. Paco, how about you? I'd give people a takeaway here on how to make this work.
Bottom line is you've got to let the creator engage. That's why they're there, to engage with an audience. And what you can do there is you can abstract everything else, make it easy for them to be on the platform so they can focus on that engagement and that growth. That's top line. That's where the experience really lies. So abstract the back office, make it seamless, make it something that it's just you turn on the computer and there it is.
Yeah, I think it's great. Allow creators to create instead of worrying about all that other stuff. All right, final question for you, real quick. Look at all the platforms that are out there today. Let's YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Google and LinkedIn and Twitch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Snap. If you had to pick just one, what's the best platform now for the creator brand intersection and why? Ricky, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, I wish you didn't start with me. My answer is the platform that has the most science behind their compensation plan and rev share plan with the creator. So I'd say the platform that's maybe not the most popular and doesn't have the most watch time anymore, but I think has much more of a sustainable business model is probably YouTube. And then of course, TikTok. But these funds are getting cute. They need to progress and become a part of their business plans because whoever truly empowers these creators to make more money, and they can do this through, more shoppable, content, and they can do this through making it easier to have click-through rates to selling products. There's other ways of doing it than just having a rev share plan, but the platform that truly makes it so the creators can build their businesses are going to be the ones that win in the future.
Yep. Paco, what about you?
Wow, I think I have to be agnostic here. Amazon Twitch is one of our biggest customers, right? So, but look, to be fair, there's so much choice out there. And if I'm in a creator's shoes, I think is understanding what is best for curating what it is that I'm passionate about and why I'm bringing an audience to the table, excuse me. So a lot to choose from. I think it just depends. It's genre specific, niche specific.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, look, you can lean into LinkedIn if you're looking at something that's more business oriented, right? Or, lean into TikTok or Instagram, whatever. Jamie, take us home on this one. What do you think? Pick one or.
I'm going to go contrarian. I'm going to say Shopify, because all they need to do is add content and they've got the, that's what I would do. Because
they have,
That's
they
not
have,
fair.
they have
That is not
content.
fair.
I love it. I love it. Go
Okay.
Shopify all day long.
They have
Jamie,
content too.
that was a great
Yeah.
answer. I wish I was.
Look, Jamie, Ricky, Paco, thank you so much. Very interesting, informative. Thank you to Digital Entertainment World for having us. 15 minutes if you want to know more about the metaverse and brands. I'm Jim Louderback from VidCon. Thank you for joining us.
thanks,
We
Jim.
will
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Jim. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.